Secondly, let's deal with Paul Johnson. So I see you submitted a closing on behalf of the residents group page. You haven't seen it? Okay, so you'll need to see it first. Did you just send that to Alison Dyson, was it?
Send it to Alison Dyson, yes.
Okay, let me just check that's on its way then. Just hold your email quickly. Did you be honest in those which contact?
Yeah, I think it's being Rebecca here has been in touch with Alice. Delaney.
Right, okay, so hopefully that's one thing's magic and we'll get the closing. Let's deal with some other matters. So we'll come back to Mr. Johnson and through your friends.
I'm not Mr. Johnson as a favourite.
Oh,
maybe
sorry,
hands.
Yeah. Let's talk about costs briefly. So where do we sit with costs? Are you intending to make costs? Have it changed?
It's firmed up a little bit. I think it's a procedural point which I flagged in the notes, sort of notice of intention that you want to run down the withdrawal of the reasons point is a procedural point. I think there are some substantive points. And I don't have them all jotted down at the moment, but they relate to the approach to conditions, the approach to Queen Belt, the approach to a series of extra policies that the council said it was going to fight over in the state and it didn't. Those sorts of things. I don't have the full list.
Okay, so tomorrow you would be intending to submit the costs?
Yes, I will. And I've had a conversation with Mr. Howlett. I want to be helpful. Whilst strictly speaking, he doesn't need it in advance. I'm going to share it with him. Well, he's not needed in advance, but he's not entitled to advance as well, I should say.
Okay, so you're going to share it with him before tomorrow?
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning, okay. We'll have an opportunity to respond and you'll make any final comments. On the council side, is there anything toward on your side with you?
Any question?
Yeah. Yes.
No more.
Okay, we'll wait to hear that tomorrow then.
But I anticipate, you've got the virtual closing at 2. We'll have ample time. We want to sort of running on. We want to find out what to do.
Okay. 4 documents. I just wanted to say about 4 documents because I'm a bit reticent about taking those totally today, but I do appreciate.
Do you want us to put the box and then send them to Bristol?
I don't really want them in my house if I want it.
I can understand
My
that.
study is about this big.
I can understand that completely.
But what I was going to say is things have changed a little bit. Obviously, I've had a retransfer of core documents before, and I think there are some gaps in it now. We're at the end of the inquiry. I just wanted to request, could I get a retransfer of where we stand today? Yeah, so I just basically got to my electronic version. I might come to you visually. So essentially, I'll probably leave with the bits behind. But yeah, if I can have that, I do that just because I don't like relying on council website basis and this is not good.
Yeah, and it has been moved to unreliable. It's going to go down.
Okay, so it's really good if I put it on reliable. Good, thank you. I'm just jumping ahead. I'm sure I saw it. I've got the section 106 for when we get to that. I'm sure I saw a silver compliance statement from the council. Can you just remind me when you sent that? Because the number emails on can't find it. has been sent, hasn't it?
We've seen it,
Yeah.
and I think it was sent to you on Monday. We saw it on late Friday about 4:30. I think it came across to you on Monday. Monday morning. Monday.
Do you have a specific time?
I'm told that it was sent to the case officer at about 11 a.m. That's the question.
When you see when that council's plans, would it be possible just to resend that to me? So it's there at the top of the line.
Yeah.
Okay, did you want a minute to read this, please? Do you want to read that, or?
Well, if we, I will need a minute. I'm just wondering if we're going to have a coffee break at some point mid-morning, then we might do it then at the same time.
Yeah, okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely fine. Next, continue then with our few outstanding other matters.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was going to form Mr. Walshaw in 1947 on design and Mr. Baker in relation to ecology consultants. Call Mr. Walsh first.
Yes, psychology first.
Sorry, design.
Oh,
Design
sorry.
first. Yeah. Well, I don't know whether it's helpful to you, but when we went through all the IDs yesterday, we just used a little paper list. Is that helpful?
Yeah,
That
perfect.
a sort of
I would
radio
have done that, but
I thought it would take a bit of time.
yeah, that's good. Thank you. So might just obviously ID 13 will probably be.
Yes, we'll answer it.
Yeah.
It was as out last night.
Yeah.
Maybe add-ons, sure.
Welcome to the inquiry. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. If I can introduce Mr. Walshaw a bit more fully to the inquiry. You put in a statement as well as a summary of appendices, and in that statement you set out in section 1 that you're a director of design at 1947, and you set out your qualifications, first class honours of environmental studies, Sheffield, masters in urban environmental design, Leeds, 17 years experience. And then I don't want to go through that statement. I want to just take us through the short note, the 2-page note that you produced and just in response to, as you set out in that note, some matters on public rights of way raised on Tuesday. Mr. Curzon and Mr. Hardy, also some references from Mr. Johnson. Can you talk us through what you have to say in relation to that? And also just kind of update us, because I think Mr. Hardy in particular was potentially referring to earlier master plans rather than the current. Yes.
Yes, so in preparing the revised master plan that's put before this appeal, we saw that there was an opportunity to make it even better by ensuring that the public rights of way became a key layer of the master plan. And so in refining the master plan, the existing public rights of way having formed the illustrative perimeter blocks, and that's important because that ensures that they're well integrated into the scheme. They benefit from active frontages and they're integrated well into the proposed development, and the master plan illustrates therefore that those public rights of way can be accommodated. on their precise alignment. There's no need for any redirections of any public rights of way. My appendix 12 and 15, which is core document 7.1.14, which is on the note, identifies the public rights of way as per the definitive impact and overlays that over the master plan and illustrates that that's the case, so that the master plan can be developed and brought forward at the reserve matter stage without the need to redirect any public rights of way.
Is it worth just turning the roads on? Sure. Maybe we start with 12 and then 15, and then let's go back to the master plan, which is more than appendix 7. So let's start with 12.
Okay. So appendix 12 overlays the definitive public rights of way over the top of the master plan. They are the routes indicated in orange.
So those are the actual routes on the definitive map.
That's correct, yes.
And those are the orange routes. It's worth just explaining the key, if you would. The yellow ones.
Yes, so there's a yellow route that runs down the south eastern corner of the site, which is used. It's not on the definitive map currently, but it is well used, and I think it's proposed to become a footpath in the future.
And not affected by the development.
Not affected by the development at all. No. It runs through a small area of woodland along that eastern boundary.
And the third one, or dark red, depends on how the print is colored.
Sure. So the purple routes are routes that appear to be used sort of in the wider context, and so we've just illustrated those. They're not on the definitive public rights of way map for the council, but they're the sort of almost the trodden paths in the vicinity of the site. So we've highlighted where they are currently, and they'll be visible on the site. There's no doubt.
What does 15 more appendix 15 shows?
So appendix 15, you'll see that the difference is the green coloured routes in that, and the green coloured routes just highlight some additional proposed footpaths that we propose to create, which essentially follow the alignment of some of the desire line trodden paths to make sure that those connections that already exist into the wider footpath network are there. So they're just in the southern part of the site, more than just around the surface water attenuation areas.
So that not only are the definitive rights of way maintained, but the existing paths that are on the ground connect up and go somewhere. That's correct. To the definitive rights of way. Yes, as a consequence of new sections of path brought by the development. That's correct. So, thank you. And then if we perhaps flip back to I think it's the final list of the master plan, which is your appendix 7, we get another little feel for the way that those paths have been integrated into the layout, which is a coloured layout. Yeah. And perhaps is that one that you can talk to explain how the routes of the definitive map paths have been retained within the layout of the scheme?
Yeah, as I alluded to just previously, we overlaid the public rights of way to inform the perimeter block structure of the master plan, with the deliberate intention of ensuring that these public rights of way could be set in green corridors. And so we see there's the east-west routes are running through the centre of the site in particular, which we label as the green walk, and then various north-south routes as well running through the scheme down towards the southern boundary, which are all set within green corridors, some parallel to the roads, but set offset from the roads, others purely green spaces through the scheme as well, but always ensuring that there's an attractive environment for those public rights as well. And I'm sort of jumping ahead in your little speaking note, but whilst we've got this bundle to hand, let's have a look at your appendix 13 and 14, which develop those themes on the master plan that you were talking about, with certain routes being called green walks or
natural parallel corridors and what have you. Do you have surely?
So 13, we thought it'd be useful to outline a footpath strategy for the site that underpins that. So the different colours of the lines crossing that plan highlight different characters, different types of routes that we could create. So you see the images just to suggest what those routes could look like. So you see the green wall, the green route through there, which should be enclosed and naturally surveyed by dwellings, for the green route through route, an attractive route to walk along. And then we have active travel routes, which are the purple routes, so opportunities for pedestrian and cycling, following the contours and the topography of the site, largely or crossing a diagonal to mitigate sort of topography of the scheme.
And those are when you're sort of you're going somewhere with a purpose, whether it's to the bus stop or schools or whatever.
That's correct. That's the principle behind them. Looking at the routes, parallel corridors, which are the pink ones, obviously where there is a road parallel, street parallel to it, but that's offset to create a nicer walking environment for the public rights of way. And then there are some other, the yellow routes indicate what's there on the ground. The bottom right is obviously a photograph of the site, how they'll just be trodden paths that are utilised. So that's the natural route. And Rule Appendix 14. Yeah, so this is just a graphic just to highlight this strategy of ensuring that the public rights of way are in the green corridors. You'll see the note in the key. It suggests that the green dots essentially are where public rights of way are within green space, the orange being where they're on the carriageway. You'll see 18.
You don't need footpaths running down the
Sorry, apologies. No, on the footway, it's on the highway, yes. And so you'll see that 88% of the linear meters of public rights of way are set within green spaces on the master plan. And where the orange dots do it, there's generally a crossing point where the public rights of way would intersect. Obviously, we've sought to minimise.
Those orange bits are the sort of inevitability of having to cross roads at some point.
Yes.
Thank you. Any more to say on that before you turn to the second topic, which is administrative provision?
No, of course.
I think this is thanks. The open space provision, I think, was over to some extent yesterday with Councillor Foster. It just there was a suggestion that provided much only above what policy required. Can you just explain the information, please?
Yeah, so Appendix 11 highlights the open space provision for the application. Delivers 6.72 hectares, or 40% of the overall site area. We acknowledge that 1.44 hectares of that is within the green belt, but that still delivers us 5.28 hectares of open space outside of the green belt within the main body of the site outside the green belt. So the statement of common ground establishes the public open space requirements for the site to be 1.57 hectares, which is approximately 10% of the site area. We provide 40% within the application, and obviously, clearly, we provide about 3 times more open space outside of the green belt than is required by policy. So it's a significant amount.
Whilst still, as we just explained, maintaining all of the footpaths.
Yes.
And just a point of clarity, I think you mentioned to me in a statement that the assumed, the illustratively rule, the assumed dwelling types in terms of size and mix, does that accord with standard or policy?
Yes, yeah, we prepared the mix of house types that underpins the master plan is basically based on the evidence base of the SHMARC, so we've ensured that that's in accordance with that.
And then the last topic is the receivable visuals. So by the visuals, I think we mean those montage illustrations that were in Mr. Rawlinson's annotations that we spent some time on yesterday. Did you prepare those? Did your firm prepare those?
Yes.
Can you talk me through, because there's a suggestion that there may be artists' impressions.
Well, yeah, I thought it'd be useful to explain the process that we go through in creating those montages. So they're a collaboration between ourselves as the designer, the drainage team, and the landscape team as well. We worked together to prepare these. So firstly, our landscape colleagues approached the viewpoints as if they were preparing a landscape visual impact assessment. So they followed the guidance defined by the Landscape Institute Technical Guidance Note. So the photos are taken at a 35mm focal length, which is regarded as the closest to the sort of human eye. The height is set at 1.7 meters, and the positions of those photographs are set by GPS. The photos are then taken with a 50% overlap, and then so that you get a 180-degree array, and then they're stitched together using Adobe Photoshop photo merge tool. So they're done and set. Properly, and those viewpoints were selected at the public vantage points within the scheme. At the same time, our 3D team created a 3D model of the terrain using the topographical survey. So that includes the surrounding slopes and natural screen, the lower parts of the site. And then using the AutoCAD drawings of the attenuation areas provided by the drainage consultants to tie into that existing landform, they model those into that terrain as well, making sure that it's a model to levels, modelling the gradients of the attenuation areas. And then in terms of creating that photo montage, in simple terms, the existing viewpoint photographs are then imported into the 3D software. The GPS coordinates of the views are used to locate where those photographs are, and then using the modelling software to generate the precise viewpoint. They take 3 fixed points within the landscape in order to align those views in the modelling software. Those schemes then overlaid and brought into the existing viewpoint photographs in Photoshop. So everything is all aligned accurately and as you would expect them to do. So yeah, it's based on all sort of processes and that you would expect them to do, and it's based on real data. And as evidenced really by Mr. Boyson, yes, they want the reason why visuals look as they are, why is because of the significant distances that as you look across that landscape between the attenuation, it has a natural flattening effect because of the distances involved and the gentle slopes that are involved and the gentle downs and ups across the landscape from those viewpoints.
And you mentioned that the drainage engineers information was importantly used in order to create the model for the basins area. And just to be clear, we spent some time yesterday looking at long and cross sections for that. Is it that material? Is it consistent with those sections?
Yes.
Any more to say on that?
I don't think so.
Okay. That's just...
Thank you very much. It's your contribution.
And Mr. Baker, thanks in terms of ecology, please. So, Mr. Baker, you already produced an assessment of all the material that had previously been done.
I have, yes.
And you have produced your statement of evidence, which I think you already have, rather than it sets out at the beginning of Mr. Baker's qualifications, over really 3 pages. I'm certainly not going to keep to read them all out. Quite considerable in terms of those parties that we've acted for and agreement in which nature, Continental Wildlife Trust, the District National Park Authority. And I think you have seen on YouTube at least and heard the ones that were made on the first day of the inquiry. You've got to make a note together, and what I'd like you to do is just talk us through that, starting at point 2.
Of course, yes. So yes, I reviewed the evidence that was given, I think primarily by Mr. Thompson, and responded to that. I think the first issue that I think is really important that we need to address is the mitigation measures. So the original ecological assessment that was produced in 2018 didn't have the benefit of the compensation measures set out in the biodiversity net gain proposal. So the assessment set out in 2018, there were various statements of certain amount of damage not being able to be addressed. But of course that has now changed because the BNG proposals have been put forward. So that does change the assessment considerably.
Well, it does, because the point that was being put was that there was an acceptance in the logical work, that there were effects, harms, and no response, no mitigation.
Or compensation.
Or compensation.
Yes.
And is that right? On the basis of the evidence in total, before this inquiry?
No, this isn't correct. We have BNG proposal in place.
Loss of hedgerows was a second chapter.
Yes, there was a description of the hedgerows being of high value. Now that statement isn't correct, and I draw your attention to the assessment that's set out in CD 1.2.20 at E. This is the paragraph number E3.16, where the hedgerows are assessed. And just an example of paragraph 1.12, the hedgerows are described as, and I quote, the hedgerows are species poor and unmanaged with an average of 3 to 4 hedge species per hedge. So that is what in terms of evaluation, we would say that was a species poor hedgerow and not of high value.
Then you've addressed it in any event with your statement to prove that we wanted.
Yes. So going on, there's no denial that hedgerows will be lost to the development. And that has been addressed in the biodiversity net gain proposal. And you'll see from the calculations that we have put forward that the BNG proposal will generate 128.8% gain for hedgerows. Now, just bearing in mind that that's the gain. So the 10% gain is what is envisaged by the forthcoming BNG legislation, which I'll touch on later on. But that's a 128, so it's an order of magnitude plus gain in terms of hedgerows.
Thank you. You mentioned in your notes about hedgerow regulations as well.
Yes. There's been quite a lot of emphasis in the evidence of the hedgerow regulations, and I just want to put that into a bit of context. My background nowadays is I do a lot of work on, my expertise is in nature conservation law. I spend most of my time in legal related, giving evidence to inquiries like this on the interpretation of nature conservation law. The hedgerow regs were introduced primarily to protect hedges that weren't going to come through the planning process in terms of their removal. So hedgerow removal prior to the regulations coming into place was essentially permitted development. One didn't need permission to remove those hedgerows. The legislation puts in place triggers for what is considered to be a hedgerow, which should be considered under the regulations. Most of the criteria for that are non-ecological related, so they're related to the number of connections, the presence of a hedgerow bank, other structural criteria. There is one criteria which looks at the species present within the hedgerow. Now, only 2 of the hedgerows within the site actually qualify on ecological grounds, and that's purely because of the presence of bluebell within the ground floor of those hedgerows. And you can see that assessment, Marm, at the end of the ecological report that was put forward, and it goes through each of the hedgerows in the hedgerow assessment. Now, that isn't an assessment of the ecological value of those hedgerows. It's purely a trigger for whether the hedgerow regs apply. Now, because the hedgerow regs was really put together to stop the removal of hedgerows outside the planning system, there is a clause within the regs which means that essentially when planning permission is granted, if that were to be the case, then the requirement of assessment under the hedgerow regs falls away. So just in summary, the important thing in my view, and in terms of the legislation, is that we should assess the ecological value of the hedgerows in a case like this. That assessment has been carried out. Yes, hedgerows will be lost, but overall we're delivering, as I've said earlier, 128% gain in terms of hedgerows. So that structure and function of those hedgerows within the area will be maintained within the development. In fact, in my view, will be enhanced because of the level of hedgerows, the number of hedgerows that will be introduced. And just finally, the indicative design for the sites has retained as many hedgerows within the development as possible. So we've been very careful to make sure that as many of those hedgerows are retained. Indeed. So that assessment, I presume that assessment in terms of the impacts on hedgerows was carried out at the allocation stage.
Impact on birds?
Yes, and this was an interesting one. But Mr. Thompson has claimed that there is data that's been gathered on birds on the site. I've not seen that data. I don't know who collected it. I don't know what their qualifications were, so I can't really assess what the level or importance of the species they have recorded on site.
I don't think any of this.
No, indeed, it's not before the inquiry on this one. The ecological assessment at table 20 does set out the value of the birds that were recorded on site, and they were all recorded as being as local value. Now, just put that in context, in terms of value, we have a hierarchy of value, starting with site value, local value, then county value, and then regional. So the birds recorded on site were all considered to be of local value. I think it was also a comparison made with Haddon Hall, and I think the approach was, well, Haddon Hall recorded a similar number of birds within their environment. Again, we've not seen that data. I don't know how it was collected. I don't know how many surveys were carried out or what the survey effort was. And I don't think to be really devolved by any means, but one just cannot make a comparison between two sites and the number of birds that have been recorded on that site. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
We go on to the BNG compensation.
So I think this is important in terms of birds. The habitats that will be created, including the hedgerows, will more than compensate for the structure and function of this area of land for the bird species. So I would expect, given the level of compensation that's being put forward, is that structure and function will be maintained and the bird populations will remain unaffected and may even benefit actually from the increased density of hedgerows that will be introduced next door to the development.
We're anticipating a question that will be put to you by the inspector, because I think there was some surprise, given the amount of open space or undeveloped parts of the site in terms of building form. The BNG was just a fraction under 7%. And your firm have done the calculation on the matter. And how does it?
Well, frankly, it is what it is. The DEFRA metric has been designed to be as well. How can I put this? As methodological as possible. So we assign value to specific habitats, and there is a certain amount of interpretation that is within the metric in terms of, for example, assessing the value of the habitats that will be created further down the line. So there is some interpretation of that. My team tends to err on the side of caution when doing those assessments. So, for example, we don't necessarily assume that that newly created grasslands will be of high in good condition at the end of the process. We generally assume that it's going to be in moderate condition. But at the end of the day, the process is formulaic. We have crunched the numbers, as it were, based on the areas. And I think the difference here is that many sites that we look at are often arable land, which has a very low value. In this case, we're looking at permanent pasture land, which has a higher starting value. So I think that's probably where the main, the difference is with other sites, is that this is pasture land and we're starting at a higher BNG value than the first place.
Impact on local wildlife sites.
Yes, I think Mr. Thompson has stated that there is an LWS, local wildlife site, within the development. There isn't. That's not the case. Dulwich Wildlife Trust have identified a potential local wildlife site within the development area. And that is Field J, which will be retained and will be managed for wildlife. It's an area of calcareous grassland, which is currently quite badly scrubbed over. There's quite a lot of scrub encroaching on that area. And with any landscape and ecology management plan, what what would be proposed is to manage that calcareous grassland and improve its value. So we don't have an impact on local wildlife space.
I've not seen the bottom left corner next to green around the bit that's actually the list of master plan and such. Bottom left is at the moment as well. It's a bit southwest. And you touched on the LNG, which is your final topic. Is there anything more to say on that?
No, I think we've covered it.
Thank you, nothing further from me.
Thank you.
That's that was a little bit unexpected.
Thank you. Should we, I think, deal with Mr. Johnson's closing now, rather than make Mr. Johnson necessarily sit through conditions and obligations, but we may want to, but we may have pieces to be. No, if he doesn't. Okay,
But I said I wanted to.
I know, so we could just have a short adjournment now, and then we can deal with that, and then we can deal with the dry bits.
Yes.
At the end.
The dry bits.
Decide. Okay, let's take a short adjournment then, just to give the appellant the opportunity to read the closing of Mr. Johnson, that she's making on behalf of Wage. So let's give that. Should we just come back at 10:30? Yeah. Okay, that's 10:30. Mr. Johnson, you want to come up? Do you have a chance to have a read of it?
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Mr. Johnson. It's a short summary of what his people have said and not new evidence. And thank you for doing it in that way.
That's good news. Lovely. Okay, when you're ready there, Mr. Johnson, if you'd like to make your
Thank you very much, Inspector. My name's Paul Johnson. I'm the chair of Killamarsh Residents Against Greenbelt Erosion, RAGE for short. My qualifications are that I am an ex-detective chief superintendent and I can read. That's about it as far as planning is concerned. Members of Killamarsh RAGE are all local residents. They're not NIMBYs, but we are concerned about the consequences for all residents of Killamarsh, particularly those living in proximity to this proposed site. Due to the many and varied challenges associated with the site, we actually know the locality and do not have to learn about it from whistle-stop tours or desktop studies. And yes, we're challenging the rationale of this site being allocated in the local plan. Once adopted in the local plan, a specific site then has to fulfill the specific requirements of policy. Councillor Clough highlighted a number of these challenges and talked about the 5,000 new homes, either newly built, partially built, or with planning permission, a short distance from Killamarsh, some 3,000 of these within 3 miles of the Killamarsh boundary. This should help the alleged high demand for houses in Killamarsh, even though it's not actually in Killamarsh, it's in the area. He also pointed out that the newly opened Gulliver's Valley Park, only 1 mile from Killamarsh, has planning permission for 3 hotels with 1,600 car parking spaces, all of which will have an effect on Killamarsh traffic. I also spoke of the sustainable development myth surrounding this site, which fails all 3 of the NPPF tests. The alleged economic benefit will not fall in Killamarsh, neither will the requirement to locate, and there's a mistake on my document there. It says development, but it means employment opportunities close to where people live. That's the aspiration of the local plan. The 4 protected employment sites are all unsuitable for reasons of age, dilapidation, capacity, or expansion potential. This will enforce out commuting when coupled with an unsustainable transport plan, as our presented evidence shows. No financial benefit will accrue from either new development opportunities or new homes bonus money due to the strategic priorities of the local plan being elsewhere in the district, neither proximate nor relevant to Killamarsh. The social aspect fails because the facilities of Killamarsh are far away from the site, an assertion supported by presented evidence. The area of green space, former Greenbelt plan, is part of the local recreation officer with 5 public rights-of-ways crossing it. These give delightful views, which I hope you will see to the south and west of the field side. We heard this morning that large areas of green space will be retained. This isn't in, but it's based on what I've heard this morning. Will be large wildlife areas to the north and the southwest of the site, the bottom left and the top right. It's strange that these areas are the ones where contamination from polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are located and where gas escapes in the north one have been found as well. But these are the wildlife sites that have been retained. The doctor-patient ratio, the Killamarsh medical practice is operating at a doctor-patient ratio of almost 3 times the district average. This will be exceeded if this development is built. Section 106 money sought will be distributed into 4 surgeries in the locality, with 1, not in Killamarsh, being shown as high need. The money for other surgeries, including Killamarsh, may well be diluted to this alleged need. Killamarsh has by far the highest housing allocation of the Tier 1 towns. The local dental surgery has not been accepting new patients for many years. It's accepted that local schools have the spatial capacity to accept new pupils, although this is only one aspect of school admissions. Parental choice is an issue, with two of the 4 feeder schools having challenging Ofsted reports. The Killamarsh Infant School, which is good, will feed in the junior school, which isn't. It's received 2 requires improvement gradings in its last 2 Ofsted visits. The secondary school at Eckington is in special measures. This means that parents will look to place their children elsewhere, which involves more use of private cars, pollution, and travel at peak times. The school with the least space is the closest to the development. The environmental impact of this assessment will be catastrophic, and I've just heard what Mr. Baker said for the ecology of the site. He talked about the Haddon Medieval Park, and this is something that's freely available on the internet about the survey of birds that were there. The park found 58 different species of birds, with 12 on the red endangered list. That's in 187 acres of land. 187 hectares. Excuse me. The Killamarsh site has 66 species, with 15 on the red list, the red endangered list. This is in 17.1 hectares. A functional greenway will be lost and replaced by one alongside the main road. Alan Whittaker spoke about the errors and faults within the sustainable transport plan proposed by the appellant. Travel by foot or cycle is not a viable option, as agreed by Inspector Housden, due to the site's location at the edge of the settlement, some 2 kilometres from facilities. The bus service was the lowest of the Tier 1 towns in the sustainability assessment, and there are many errors in the document in terms of route and service provision, as outlined, with evidence of topography and difficulty provided by Mr. Whittaker. The unviable policy will engender significant car use in addition to the almost 2,000 daily additional trips suggested by the appellant. Matt Evans outlined with photographic evidence the parlous state of the Killamarsh roads, particularly in relation to the proposed site. He identified pinch points where traffic would be stalled because of parked private vehicles with nowhere else to go. The Strategic Transport Issues Report describes these roads as having poor links to the strategic network and indicates that the roads to Chesterfield, the M1 and the South, as we can testify having tried to get here this morning again, as minor roads. Stephen Thompson described the ecology of the site, including the need to protect existing trees, woodland and hedgerows for their immediate value. He stressed the need to protect trees and hedgerows or development permission would be refused. He referred to the hedgerows on the site, all passing the 30-year longevity requirement to be protected by the hedgerow regulation. We just heard from Mr. Baker on that, Inspector. Mr. Baker said that these were not important hedgerows. The Access Ecology Report in 2018 said that they were ecologically important hedgerows of more than 140 years old, based on their evidence. It seems like if you don't like what one expert said, you find another one who will change that. That might not be fair to Mr. Baker. Yeah. He said they weren't ecologically important. So. Some of the hedgerows are identified as ecologically important, being more than 150 years old. The environmental impact assessment for this site shows that the loss of functionality and structure will mean that there is no longer a functional green network across the site. It will be replaced, as you heard, by one beside the roadway, the main east-west carriageway through the site. He also referred to the loss of 70% of the semi-improved grassland, including a wildflower meadow. Kew Gardens reinforced the importance of wildflower meadows for soil stability and the landscape's value in absorbing rainwater. Mr. Thompson referred to the local wildlife sites proximate to the appeal site being affected by this development, and that equivalent or better provision for lost ecology should be available. Should be available equivalent in quantity and quality, and should be available prior to the loss in accordance with the policy ID 10. Habitats will be lost, and there is no mitigation for such loss. Councillor Eva Thompson outlines her evidence, the concerns about biodiversity and the loss of the site as informal recreation space. She airs her concerns about the site's mining legacy and details her survey of local schools, sharing concerns expressed by one school about congestion, the school crossing point outside school, and worries about road safety. If you go there about 3:15 today, Inspector, outside or between the infant and junior school there, you'll see the chaos that ensues. Bridie Mahoney was concerned about the air quality assessment of the site, which was very late in being provided and which did not appear to cover traffic pinch point congestion in the vicinity of the site, with resultant emissions from stationary idling traffic or a main junction on Springfield Road, its junction with Upperthorpe Road, where the junction is on an incline where idling traffic might create pollution. We live on that junction and I can attest to that. She was also concerned that the many challenges of the site in question had not been subjected to a requirement for an environmental impact assessment. She provided evidence to support her assertion. Claire Cooper expressed her concern at the visual narrowing of the gap between Killamarsh and Springfield caused by the 43-metre drop in elevation, leaving the site clearly in view from the direction of Springfield. This closes the gap and there's a visual intrusion into the countryside, with the Westhorpe Field Business Park being totally invisible from this location, which is the only place where the site can be overlooked. You look from Springfield, the only way that this is overlooked, near the college, you can see the fields of the site, but you can't see the Westhorpe Field Business Park at all. Councillor Wendy Tinley, unfortunately now confirmed with COVID, refers to the potential archaeological importance of the Westhorpe site, with investigations potentially finding a medieval holloway, a ring ditch, which is a former burial ground, and a building potentially from prehistory. These are in locations which would have building over them on the indicative plan. Many other potential finds are indicated from scans of the land. Councillor Alex Platts outlines his fears for increased flooding in the site locality, showing pictures of recent historical events and expressing concerns that the removal of soil and the wildflower meadow could affect ground stability and drainage by concrete replacing soil, which would affect the groundwater absorption capability. Councillor Chris Curzon outlines his objections to the removal of footpaths from their original historical locations and allocating routes on pavements, a stance supported by the representative of Sendra, the local Ramblers Association. I appreciate the point that the representative of Sendra may have been looking at an older plan, Inspector, and I want to just cover that in my closing comments. Mr. Curzon claimed that he and neighbours had a legal right of access, having fulfilled the requisite use qualification, and that they had also had a right of access through a legal easement by prescription, which would prevent part of the site being developed in accordance with the current indicative plan. Mr. Chris Broadhead returned to the mining legacy of the site, the challenging remediation costs and the possibility of the site viability being questionable. This was actually in the first design and access statement. It was actually questioned by the representative representing Harworth Estates at that time. I've done that in previous representations. He was greatly concerned because the conditional acceptance of the current application by the UK Coal Authority came from incomplete records, although causing one known mine shaft of the 5 known to be on site not to be found, sorry. This is exacerbated by the unknown coal exploitation activities, which are evidenced by the unrecorded workings of the shallow seams on site, leaving made ground on the surface. He highlighted that authorised remediation. He highlighted that authorised remediation did not necessarily mean a risk-free site, highlighting a specific instance close to the appeal site. Inspector, in closing, I would like to give thanks to you specifically for your fair-mindedness in allowing me to give this closing statement on behalf of Range. As you're fully aware, there's been a tsunami of documents in relation to this application, 871 at the latest count, and 250 placed on in the last 2 weeks, some of it repetitious, of course. We have been lay people navigating the minefield of planning law and case law, which you are only too familiar with. We've had some help and support from some parish, district and county councillors, none from the district authority. Frankly, their cowardly, they're my words, decision not to support their planning committee and their one lay witness with expert advice is not acceptable. Local advice suggests legal advice suggested that the council should, to use a phrase used yesterday, fall on their sword in respect of all the grounds of appeal. But that legal advice, as I understand it, suggested that they obtained more evidence before doing that. That wasn't done. Officers are not challenged. A lot of the proposals from Harworth, they've had an 11-year association with Harworth because that's when Rage was formed 11 years ago, when we were told that this site was inevitably going to be built on, and all we could do was alter what was put on it. Rage was formed as a result of that to try and find that proposal. I'm not suggesting any impropriety at all. I'm suggesting mere familiarity. When Rage have found and documented anomalies that the council should have unearthed, in my view, a new expert or a plan or a desktop study has been sent in by the firm because they have the ability to do that and the wealth to do that. No one has looked after the health and welfare issues that appear to be associated with this application. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Okay. I presume you didn't want. You can still raise things. Okay. Can we then look at the conditions first of all, or would you rather do legal agreement?
Do you mind if we do the legal agreement first?
Okay.
And there's a reason for my request, and that is that the terms, the language of the document is agreed, but we just need to do a quick swap of the plan on the back.
Right.
And it'll take a little bit of time to sort out signatories, and one of the opportunities for signatories is in the council today.
Right.
And then the next one will be next Thursday, and I'm concerned that it's the day before Good Friday, and I want to try and get the process moving as soon as we're happy with the document. So a little plan swap needed.
So that would mean I can walk away today with a completed legal agreement if you made that plan.
No, because the document still has to be not just the council, but several other parties need to sign it, and they have to sign the plan as well as the document.
Okay. So when do you envisage I'll have a final copy?
Well, ordinarily I would have said a week, but I think with Easter stuck in the way, it's one of those opportunities where you can almost guarantee there'll be a couple of days next week when somebody won't be available. And maybe even a couple of days a week after. So, a fortnight?
Yeah, probably. So by the 14th of April, Friday the 14th. Yeah. Okay.
Which allows us to start the process today with one of the signatories you see, but there are lots of others that need them to complete.
I thought this, for some reason I thought I had a final copy before me.
It's agreed.
It's agreed.
Okay,
Okay,
it's agreed.
Fine.
You can take it as that.
Okay.
And the plan swap will be very minor, but needs to be done.
Okay. Okay. 14th of April then. And don't expect any delay beyond that, so you won't be moving to make a decision once you think that.
Yeah, I think subject to any comments that you have on the document now, you will be able to take away the text as a final thing.
Okay.
And that is confirmed.
Okay. Okay. Shall we run through it then?
you see the summary note? Did that come through to you with the 106? I hope it did. Not a spare, yeah. It's a 4-page note, which
Summarizes what it does.
yeah, it stops us. It gives us the references of where each point is, but it stops us having to flick back and forth in the document to cross-check definitions and things on.
Right.
I hope that's helpful, and let me know if you'd like me to sort of summarise and work through that.
Pull it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually. But it's agreed wording. That's easy. Yeah, I think just walk me through it then, because you've been more familiar than me at this stage. The various obligations and
yeah, the first thing importantly that it does is deal with affordable housing, and running from the summary note. The amount of affordable housing is 20% of the dwellings. So that's however many dwellings, whether it's 397 or whatever, 20%. The tenure, location, size and mix has to be submitted and agreed with council. The construction of them has to be in accordance with the planning permission, including reserve matters. And then there's a delivery mechanism, which is identify the registered provider, enter into a contract with the registered provider. Upon occupation of 30% of the market housing, if there hasn't been a registered provider entered into a contract to acquire, then there's a notification to the council. Council can then nominate a registered provider of its own, and those properties will be marketed to that other party. If no nomination, 30 days, the owner will be permitted to revert to an RP of its own choosing and use reasonable endeavours to contract to transfer the rented and shared ownership units, which together comprise the affordable housing. There's a cascade mechanism, as there invariably is in this sort of arrangement, because in the event that some, or maybe all, of the affordable housing units are not taken forward by a registered provider, then it reverts to an amount of money, which we see if you turn the summary document to the second page halfway down, equates to 45% of the market value of each of the affordable units. That's the commuted sum bit. And that's how that delivery mechanism for the affordable units works. Then the next part of the 106 is essentially a series of financial contributions, and the approach to those has been trailed already in the evidence, although some of the numbers are slightly different to how they were in the committee report. And the reason for that, I understand, is because in relation to, in particular, health, there is a new figure in the standard formula that is being used, the formula that derives from the infrastructure delivery plan endorsed by the local planning section, part of that process. And that new figure is an update in the cost base of construction. Obviously, BCIS type cost base is moved from time to time upwards, and it's the latest iteration.
Is this still compliance statement?
I'm not the author of that. It's a council document, so I wouldn't say for certain.
If I'm going to look at this house then.
Now to meet targets appendix 4 of the CIL compliance
Yeah,
statement.
let's look at that. So that's calculated on 297. But there's an amount per dwelling.
In the section 106, it's per dwelling contribution.
It's probably worth just looking at the way the contributions work, because some of them are fixed amounts and some of them are per dwelling amounts.
Yeah.
So the first contribution, I'm working off the summary, is legal fees. Obviously, it's a fixed amount. County legal fees, ditto. Monitoring payment, fixed amount. County monitoring payment, fixed amount. The affordable housing community summary I alluded to earlier, that is if there are no RPs that take some or any of the properties, that's 45% of the market value. So that's not a fixed amount, it's per affordable unit that isn't taken through the intended first channel of disposal.
So if they won't get picked up, you make a contribution.
Correct. And it's 45% of the market value of the affordable units that haven't been disposed of to an RP, sort of despite best efforts, really. The next is additional first homes contribution, which is a calculation, again, by reference to the number of dwellings. The next is the cricket pitch provision.
Let's just pause on
Yes,
additional first home contribution. So we can see if I've got the corresponding in the field compliance statement. The district council, district council, council, additional first home contribution. The field compliance statement covered both county council and the district.
Cultural and administrative and project management side of the the affordable housing is the local policy is
I was just talking about additional first home contribution. I think we've covered affordable housing.
there isn't any requirements for additional first home. I think it was written in there as an option. The council's policy doesn't actually require a first home contribution.
The first homes is a sub part of the affordable housing. It's not an additional part.
Oh, right, okay.
The definition of the first homes is on page 12 of the actual 106. The first home is the affordable housing unit to be provided as first homes. So it's a sub part of, not an additional.
So the justification for it was under affordable housing, is it? Can still provide?
Yeah, it provides a mechanism for affordable homes to be provided by or to freehold, or in case of flats, which I suspect won't survive, but if it does, long leasehold disposals at a price capped in accordance with guidance published by the Department for Levelling Up, etc. in May 2021. So it's simply another route into affordable housing.
Yeah, it's effectively discount market.
Yeah,
but as a first home.
So they still help me out here. There's still compliance statement basically telling me there's a policy in the local plan that says 20% affordable housing for tenable dwelling. So that's what we're securing. 20% affordable housing. But what's this additional first payment? How does that work?
It's not additional, it's part of the 20%.
Right.
And it operates as a market discount fixed in accordance with government guidance.
Yeah. Well, forgive me, there's still compliance statements, there's nothing about it. It doesn't explain that. But if that, I have not seen it before. It says additional first home contribution. The lower of the following two amounts, 30% their amounts, but I don't see justified before me in the still compliance statement. Well, I missed some point.
It's in the agreement as an option, like a way of contributing towards the 20% affordable housing. But the policy itself doesn't have a requirement for first homes.
Okay.
So it's just in there as one of the options in the mechanisms of, when the scheme comes in, it's decided that part of what's provided will be first homes, then it's the section 106 provides for that.
I mean, that sounds fine when you say it verbally, but it's not in the still compliance statement set out like that. So as I understand it, it's 20% affordable housing. If you can't get a provider to take them on, then you'll pay 45% of the market value for them. And then there's also this caveat that if some of them are first payment, you'll pay some money as well. In real layman's terms.
I think that's the drift of it,
right?
I think the first home was something that in the negotiation of this we said no to, but the council was sort of insistence on. I can come back to the first homes in a bit more detail in the agreement, but I'm just going to sidestep to another point. There is, just so that you're aware of it, page 24 of the document, what I think is commonly referred to as a blue pencil test.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with those.
Just so that you've got that.
Yeah.
If there's any bit of it that you don't like.
Yeah. Well, that's really the nub of what I'm just trying to get is, have I got the information before me to justify these obligations in the still compliance statement?
Yeah, I think if you turn to page 33 of the 106, you'll see first homes are dealt with.
Yeah.
Construction, delivery. Delivery includes sale in a particular way, eligible criteria. And the point that I think you were asking about, which was the amount of money, the lower of the two amounts point that was in the summary, is where you get to, if you can't deal with them in a similar way to the spiral out point and the other affordable. If you can't get rid, then there is a catch-all that is a monetary catch-all.
Right. Okay. And is there anything to support how the monetary amounts have been?
Well, that, I'm afraid, is back to the council.
Yeah. Okay.
And can I perhaps come back to that?
Yep.
If we go back to the summary in terms of the other contributions, the cricket pitch point is in two parts. One is for works, the other is for maintenance. It's a fixed sum. It's not a sum that depends upon the number of dwellings. The healthcare contribution is directly per dwelling, and it derives from the latest calculation coming out of the protocol from the infrastructure delivery plan, with the latest figures is what I mentioned earlier. And it's worked out, or capable of being worked out, per dwelling, and then you multiply it up by the number that there are.
Yeah.
And the playing pitch contribution is very much like the cricket
Sorry,
contribution.
Mr. Sager, let's just work through them one by one,
Yeah.
just to see if I've got that information that I need when I'm writing it up. Do you want to say any more about how these amounts have been calculated for the affordable housing community sum or the additional first homes contribution? I don't see it in the still compliance statement. Are you able to direct me to it?
I'm not at the moment, Madam. That's why I asked this on additional time.
Okay, all right. Right, okay, so cricket pitch then, so that's in the still compliance statement. Okay. One more. So this is basically to provide a cricket pitch at Killamarsh Female Athletics Club. This community sum. Now, William.
The community sum for these items, the legal items are taken from the Sport England sports calculator.
Okay.
That's it explained in the self-compliance statement.
Paragraph 3.9 onwards.
Yeah, I'm there.
Sport England formula is at 3.12.
Okay. The formula is referred to, the formula is not there. So I guess the still compliance statement is asking me to take its word about that calculation.
Well, I think it's appendix 5. We've got the formula.
Okay. It doesn't say that in the still compliance statement. You can see why it takes the inspectors so long to write up this, isn't it? So that's in appendix 5, is it? Can I make a note of that? Because it's probably not a good use of inquiry trying to piece this together, you know. Appendix 5, yeah. That's well and the Sport England calculation, yeah. Specific to this playing pitch.
Well, it's an email that's got the calculation in.
Okay.
The origin of the numbers in the calculation isn't in that, but it's referred to based on Sport England facilities costs.
Right. Okay.
Second quarter 2021.
So you've got a Sport England calculation for how much a cricket pitch is going to cost you, 55,000, yeah. And then you've got the life cycle cost. How's that calculated? Is that in Appendix 5 as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Healthcare contribution then, so where does that come from?
That I think is the detail is in Appendix 4. Yeah. Of the council document.
So Appendix 3 in the still complaint statement.
Appendix 3 is identified as a highways point in the list of appendices.
The still compliance statement, Appendix 4 has the calculator, which is the standard calculator for the health care.
Okay.
And it has a email to Sue Ray that justifies the increase in cost, which is a bill cost increase from 2,400 to 4,500, which justifies the difference between the figures.
So that's the difference between the figures.
Well, at the time of the committee report, the cost per dwelling was £480.24.
Yeah.
The cost per dwelling now is £900.45.
Yeah.
And that email, we understand, and we worked for the council to understand that's the justification. It's the BICS increase the costs from the district formula. The way I've collated it, I have two documents in Appendix 4. There is a pro forma calculator, and then there is an email to Mrs. Ray from Joanna Woolgar Norton, dated 7th of March.
Yeah. So it says 2,400 to 4,500. How does that link to 900?
So if you have a look in the other Appendix 4, which is the calculator, and turn over to the third page.
Yeah.
There is a tabular nature that identifies additional patients at 993, which aligns with the evidence, the standard area 0.08, and then the third one is this 4,500 with an asterisk saying updated May 22 in bill costs, which is what that email does, that calculates the total figure. But clearly we break it back to a cost per dwelling because it's an up to in the description of development, not an absolute figure.
So did you say 4,500 is the cost per dwelling?
Yeah. But the 4,500 is the cost, which is identified, but that's not the Section 106 contribution.
Right, yeah,
Section 106.
That's the total cost.
That's right. So the way this formula is based is that it's a bill cost to enhance the healthcare provision based upon a formulaic approach of how many patients, what size that would translate into floor space, what the bill cost to the public sector would be to deliver that gets to a figure. And then
4,500 is
the bill
pound per
square metre. That's the
You've worked out the square meterage and then worked out per dwelling.
The NHS has in this standard. So, Ma'am, there is a developer contributions protocol which is produced by the council, by the district, county council, which is one of your core documents. That's the basis of the calculation that the county council bring forward. They have this standard formula which we justify in evidence of being appropriate in line with the local plan evidence base. And what they have taken the opportunity to do between the committee and now is update that base build cost, which is nearly double the requirement. In other words, the calculation starts with 397 dwellings. It says that equates to 993 patients. It then applies the amount of space per patient, which is a 0.08 square meters, so it obviously reduces the number right down. It then multiplies by the build cost per square meter, and that's the figure that's gone to 4,500 per square meter from 2,400 since the committee report.
Okay.
It comes to a total now of 3,574. And then that is divided back by the number of 397 dwellings, and that's where the 900 comes from.
Okay. And if the figures change with the amount of dwelling, the pre-pencil tools allows you to adjust that.
No, because as we've got to 900 per dwelling, which is the end of this calculation with all the new numbers in, to a per dwelling figure, then it is that per dwelling. So if it's 377 dwellings, it's 377 times 900.
That's why you've done it then.
Yes. If it's 397 dwellings, then it's 397 times 900.
That's useful. Okay, thank you.
I don't want to labour this, but it is just worth noting the appellant's evidence on health, and there's a document that's part of the appendix bundle to Mr. Rollinson's that says, we can see that there is stress at the closest GP surgery in terms of the patient GP ratio, but there isn't in the group. So it's a location point rather than it's a micro location rather than an actual location overall the health group. So that may need a bit of thought, not to do with the calculation and the origin of the numbers, but on the principle.
Right, thank you.
Mr. Robinson reminds me it says paragraph 5102, and he refers to his healthcare statement that with that proof.
Okay. Let's move on then to another playing pitch.
Yeah. Green G pitch.
What's the 3G pitch?
An all-weather surface playing pitch. As to the council's justification for it, well, it's back to them again.
It's the very last page of appendix. Well, there are only 2 pages. The last page is appendix 5.
It's the PPS action plan. And the project is local to the application site, but we're not actually told where. The Killamarsh Sports Centre. This is a service project.
That's all. Well, that's at Killamarsh Sports Centre.
Should that say there is a further project that is local? The contribution of the calculation according to the policy methodology. Which policy? And where is that methodology?
The policy is ID 10. And it's the for England calculator what English benefit demand calculated it, provide the calculation.
So is there a shortage at the moment for these sorts of languages in Killamarsh?
There's there was a slight undersupply that was identified in the local plan process, and this policy ID10 had this requirement for off-site division.
Okay. So if I look at ID10, that's going to tell me how it's being calculated in respect to this appeal, specifically where the money will be spent and how it's been calculated.
Yes. Part of the evidence though to underpin that was the benefit strategy action plan.
Oh, that's what the
And that-
PPS action plan is. So where is that? Is that attached as an appendix?
It's not attached with the appendix. I've put it online.
It's the core document. So,
It's not got a number because it was one of the later
okay.
documents we put on there. But it's big loaded core document.
Okay. Sounds really easy to navigate. Can you get a core document number so that I can find this in 2 or 3 weeks' time when I'm writing it up? I'm remembering this conversation.
Yeah, well, you better, and then you better get to us because we're letting you have a wee transfer of activities of all of them.
It really should be in all in the still compliance statement. Still compliance statements are supposed to say what you want, why you want it, justifying it, where's the policy support, how you calculated, specific where it's going and why it's going there because there's an identified need. I'm not sure this still compliance statement is doing that for me.
Well, I'm not sure it's doing that for the 3G pitch. I'm not sure it's doing that for the cricket pitch. And I know you've got your outstanding proposed point.
It is vitally important to justify contributions because we have to meet certain tests in order to accept obligations and the planning permission. We have to be satisfied, and I have to be satisfied they meet those tests too. You know, otherwise they just get scrapped. So they're very important. Can't just ask for money and not justify it. When granting planning permission, that's seen as paying for planning permission essentially. Okay. Should I carry on or? I mean, I'm happy. I realise this is probably very painful for everybody watching, but do you want me just to take the still compliance statement, or should we keep going through and seeing what's missing and trying to add to it?
I think you need to, Mum. I think you need to interrogate the council's justification for the obligations.
Well, I can do that at home. I've got the still compliance statement.
Yeah, but if it's got bits missing, you need to.
Well, I know they should
giving them
be
homework.
missing. Really,
No.
at this stage, I should be walking away with the still. This was raised at the case management conference very early on. What we need, and it's nothing new. Still compliance statements. I mean, they come up every single time. Okay, let's have a quick look at education. We've got it just based on here. So is it just special education, or is it broader than that?
106 and the evidence is that there is only special education needs. There's nothing for primary, there's nothing for secondary.
Okay, so it is just special education. Right. Examples, the only one. Forward to the calculations of DCC's developer contributions protocol. Is there anything more on that? and how 727.63 per dwelling was calculated, and where it's going specifically, and why it's going there. I mean, yeah, I'm on education, special education. I mean, I read what's in the still compliance statement, but is there any more than that? We can say no.
Well,
Alternatively, I mean,
calculation is in the Derbyshire County Council's development contributions protocol, which
right.
is a core document.
Okay, where's the core document reference in this still compliance statement so that I may navigate these when trying to work out how you calculated these things? Would it be worth me saying, this is just a suggestion, that perhaps the council take this away and revise it and make it a bit more user friendly, and then we could have that, you know, it can be circulated.
I think that's a very good idea. I think you need chapter and verse, and you need to know the core documents, what they are and where they are.
Yeah, exactly. I need to be able to get my hands on that information to satisfy those tests, so that I can effectively authorise these obligations. Let me just open the CMC note just to tell you what is needed from in the still compliance statement again. So just bear with me. Okay, right. I will require a fully detailed justification for any obligations, setting out how it complies with the still regulations, in particular the test of necessity, i.e. how it would mitigate a harm arising out of the development proposed, which should include a reference to any policy support and in relation to any financial contribution, exactly how it has been calculated, and on precisely what it would be spent. Okay, that is in the CMC note. So are you happy you can do that for me? Yeah. And if you're referring to something like the PCC report or whatever, make sure acronyms are explained. And if I have to go somewhere else to see the calculation, provide that, at least a reference to it, if not an appendix, or just put it in the still compliance statement. So it's all there would be ideal. Can we set a deadline for that? Is there a week for that? Yeah. So just for argument's sake, let's call it the Friday. So 7th of April. Yeah. Is that okay with your parents? Keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I mean, it really is for the council to justify the points. We've done the 106 to reflect those points, but I can talk you through what the 106 does, but it's up to them to justify why it's there in the first place.
Yeah, I realise it's more on the council this one.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shelve that for the moment, and we'll get a better still compliance statement that will do what it needs to do, and then I can deal with that outside of inquiry time. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. The mechanism for first homes, because we talked about first homes in terms of mechanism, we talked about it in terms of justification. I'm not speaking to justification, but in terms of mechanism, what might be useful, just to make a quick note, is page 12 of the 106 defines first homes as the affordable housing unit to be done as first homes. So that's the first homes are a sub part of the affordable.
Okay.
Then it's worth just keeping a note of what's on page 13. There's the definition of first homes, sales price to buyer, and that sets up the mechanism for their delivery. And the first home's contribution is on page 4. And that's in the circumstances where the first homes haven't been provided, and it's sometimes called like a spiral out, or the sort of the commuted sum option. So it's a bit like the provision of affordable housing to an RP that doesn't get taken up by the RP. It's the sale of first homes on terms that make them affordable, but then don't get taken up, and what happens next. And that was the contribution point that you were looking at in the summary note.
Okay.
That's the mechanism of it. That's the gist of it.
Okay.
As to whether there is a justification for first homes as a subset of affordable housing across the table.
Okay. Understood. Yeah, okay.
Are we going to need a further session on this at some point? I hope not, but
So, the section 106.
yeah,
I
I hope not, because
wouldn't envisage one.
for the practical point I made earlier, I'm now quite keen to get it out for execution and signing and to meet the deadline of 14.
Yeah, well, no, all we're talking about it, your blue pencil clause we'll deal with. And so I think you can push on,
Yes,
and then whatever I put in the decision.
we'll, through the blue pencil clause, either
way out.
potentially chop it out or not.
Absolutely, yeah. So it won't delay you, and I don't think we need another session. I think the council have had adequate opportunity to justify the obligation. Obviously, they've got another week to do that, but if nothing is forthcoming, well, you know, I'll have to take it at that point. Whether I have something in front of me or whether I don't, I will then proceed to look at the tests of those obligations, and then it will be reflecting my decision.
Yes, that's understood.
Okay. Can we move on to conditions then?
Yes, ma'am.
So we've got some in dispute and others agreed.
Yes, ma'am. The inquiry document reference, I think that you'll need is ID 1. And then it would be helpful, I think, also if you have the transport statement of case, which common ground, sorry, which is core document reference 3.3.3.
That's in respect to the disputed condition.
Yes, indeed, part of them. Shall I just talk you through where we've got to and what you've got in front of you? Would that be helpful?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So, Mum, we've worked closely with the local authority, and within ID1 you have, as you rightly say, the list of agreed conditions, and then you have a schedule of conditions that are not agreed. If I just explain the broad principles. Of those that are not agreed, there's two parts. The first part is two conditions whereby they relate to the green belt and they relate to the sustainable urban drainage basins. And the difference between the two parties, I think, can be characterised about whether the additional information within the conditions that the appellant brings forward is necessary.
Okay, sorry, backtrack a little bit. Inquiry fatigue. Are we here?
We will be. I was just giving you the overview, and then you understood, if that would help. Okay. So there's two conditions related to that, and we've engaged with the council on the precise wording. So it's more a matter of principle around that, which we'll come back to in detail. And then the second group of conditions relate to
that are contested.
That are contested.
Yeah.
They relate to highways, and again, there is no difference between us on the necessity for the conditions. It's the precise wording and the precise enforceability.
Yeah.
I've got Mr. Blair with me to help talk through those, because he engaged with the county council. So, I mean, your hands really. If you want to go through the non-contested first, up to you really.
I mean, non-contested, I must admit, with the fact that we've had relatively full days, I haven't looked at these outside of inquiry time, because we've been, well, by my count, long days, and I haven't had a chance to look at them. They're uncontested. I mean, let's have a quick flick through and see if anything jumps off the page. But can I just have general agreement that if little tweaks are needed and implementation clauses and that sort of thing, that you're happy for me to make to tighten up?
Yes,
but essentially they're agreed between you. Let's just I'll run through them quickly, just like I say, to see if anything jumps off the page. But with the caveat that I haven't looked at them before now, and generally if something is thrown off, I can always deal with that in an email separately between both parties as well. But let's have a quick look. Details of, so number one, details of access. Yeah, clearly we don't need that because that's being agreed.
It's got in brackets other than points of access.
Sorry.
So,
yeah.
So what we're agreeing here is the location, not the detail.
What does that mean then?
So it's where they are. I think you heard the evidence around the precise geometry is yet to be agreed at reserve matter stage. Hence, it's kept within reserve matters. But we are in front of part of the application element is that we know where those access points are.
Right. I thought we had plans for those access.
We do, ma'am. In condition 2 are the plans to be approved, and those are listed at the bottom of that first page, which are the plans.
Right. So just explain to me why it's still a reserve matter.
Because it's the location of the access points rather than before you today, the precise geometry of those accesses.
So I've got the location of them, but not the precise geometry.
It's important perhaps to understand, I think, the chronology of what happened. So there were detailed plans for all 3 accesses. Reasonably shortly before the planning committee, the county council, the highway authority, said we're happy with the principle, we're happy with the locations, but the detail of those junctions isn't quite how we would like it.
Okay.
So it was settled at the time that the matter was put to the council for determination, that only the location rather than the detail on the drawings would be approved.
Like the visibility displays.
Visibility displays, geometry, radius,
right.
all of that.
Okay. So what I would normally do with that then is, rather than call it a reserved matter, I'd just have a condition saying I want those details of the highway accesses. So could we do it that way?
We can, ma'am, from our perspective, yes. And if it gives you any comfort, ma'am, the County Council statement of common ground, what Mr. Blair has done is carry on those discussions, and we know what the answer is. They just were not part of the process for the reasons Mr. Davis said. So there's no doubt about
it can be achieved. It just needs to be submitted.
For illustrative purposes, they're actually appended to the statement of common ground on highways with that will be what is submitted to meet the terms of this condition. And we know that it works.
Are you happy for me to draft that condition if it's not called a reserve matter?
Yes, ma'am.
Something that asks for the detail, basically detail of access is to be submitted and approved in writing.
Yes,
yeah. Okay. So we've got approved plans, which I'm not going to check in detail. Site location, existing site, indicative and solely in relation to points of view or access, indicative master plan. You mean solely in relation to location?
Yes, it points off it for access and that.
Yeah,
The location will be the same for
okay. but that's what you mean.
That's the other one.
Yeah. And 21 site work. Roundabout, okay. Explain that to me.
Where do you want to take that? The inspector to the off-site works.
You're seeking permission for that outline.
That's fine.
Oh, you might need a microphone just for anyone.
That's right, at the Walford Road roundabout. The plan may be difficult for you to find. It's actually Appendix O in the TN.
In the TN, did you say?
Sorry, Transportation Assessment, TA.
Oh, TA, yeah, okay. Does that have a reference?
Yes, the reference number is A1. Sorry, you're talking about
The
the core
transport
document.
assessment,
The core
yeah.
document reference. I don't have that just to hand, but I'll find it. You bear
Okay.
with me.
What's happening to this roundabout?
Just a minor amendment to address some slight capacity impacts,
Right,
but very minor highway works. Well, the reference is CD 1.2.28.
1.2.28.
That's the transport assessment, and the appendices, no doubt where the plan is 1.2.29.
Okay. So appendix O is 1.2.29. All the appendices in full.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1.2.29. Okay. Right. So presumably that's something the highway authority want doing.
That's right, and it's in the highway statement of common ground, transport statement of common ground that they wish to have that.
Right.
It arose out of the initial assessments, and there's a mitigation works offered.
And is that capable of being conditioned? These sorts of work?
I believe they're just section 278 highway improvements. I think they are, but I'm not the planning expert.
It's a Grampian condition to require those works to be done per that plan. It will be delivered through a section 278 agreement, which is an agreement with the highway authority for the works to be done in the highway itself.
I think you'll see that Grampian condition subsequently, man. That's the contested highway conditions, but as I say, only on the detail. So this is referencing the drawings to be approved, and then you've got a condition subsequently on how and why. And for your reference, in the County Council Statement of Common Ground, section 3, bullet point 10 is the one that confirms things are necessary. All condition 2 at the moment is trying to do is to confirm the plans.
Okay. And if I thought the Grampian condition do it without reference to that plan, would you be okay with that?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And you could, just looking at this, you could take the view that there are there's a bit of doubling up, because you don't need to identify it as an approved plan if you just require it in Grampian conditions somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay.
You could take the view that there's a bit of doubling up with the location of the access points, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drawings referred to, when actually they're all of the access points are on the indicative master plan anyway.
Okay. I'll take a view.
Can I just say, generally the practice for the council is to have a list of approved plans, because it just makes it so much easier as we go through the process. That we know we have a definitive source of listing of the plans that have actually been approved.
Yeah. Okay.
The parameters plan, however, is an important one, I think. It may be dealt with in a separate condition. It's up to you.
No, that's
But
I'm
the
happy
parameters
with
plan,
that.
I think, it's an important one to have in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, hang on. in accordance with the parameters plan. Is it not more that the reserve matters would come in accordance with the parameters plan?
Yes, ma'am. This again is contested condition 4. You, if you scan your eye down, you will see that there is the reason for the parameters plan, and again, it's only contested because we want to put some additional wording in. So if you wanted to do the same and take it out of condition 2, you can rely on it in condition 4, subject to what Mrs. Wright's just said.
Okay.
So there's no dispute between the two parties that the parameters plan should form part of any planning approval, and it's that reference, it's where it's located.
Yeah, okay. So again, if I took it out of there, but there was a condition asking that the reserve matters come in accordance with the parameters plan, we'd be happy with that.
Yeah.
Happy, not happy.
Well,
I mean, I know you're previous that you like a list.
Yeah.
It's just the way I like do things, but you know, I know your comment. The thing is, an approved plan is quite important. It's quite an important thing, and there are things that are approved plans, and there are things that are not. I don't know how to explain that, but being in general, it's more. My thinking at this stage is a parameters plan is more to inform your reserve matters, and you have separate conditions that explain what you want to see in your reserve matters. And in my experience, a list of approved plans is not the place for that, because it's a separate condition that's explaining what we want in the reserve matters.
I'm going to suggest that some authorities I work in have it as an informative, the list of the plans, so that the health informations and the field of citizens of the right.
It's a very good point. You don't bother with informative. Okay, all right. I assume you're happy for me to make a judgment, and then I will be, you know, you can take me to the High Court if I okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me, could I just offer something? If it helps the council to reference the plans in the transport statement of common ground, the highway authority list them out and say that they list the drawing numbers and say that they're acceptable to them. So if it's just a case of referencing back to what is acceptable, you can find it in the document.
The plans will be in there. They all have a part to play for sure. Our access plans, site location plan, and our parameters plans. Okay, let's move on then. Limitation on development then. So no more than 397 dwellings. That makes perfect sense. So I see here now that condition 4 has been taken out because that's in dispute, which is what we were talking about. The development shall take place in general. Yeah, this is more what I was thinking.
Yeah. So you want me to deal with that now?
Who's taken it out? Have you taken it out?
So if you look at the other schedule, ma'am, I'll go through each bit. So it's agreed between both parties. The first sentence, the development shall take place in general conformity with, and the reference is the right reference.
Yep.
The area of the site identified on the parameters plan as greenbelt land shall be developed only for the provision of attenuation. The moment it says ponds, I wish to change that to basins for the reasons that you've said. But subject to that, footpath, cycleways, a cycle track, and shall not be used to accommodate any new buildings or above ground structures. That's all agreed between the two parties.
Although we're not proposing any cycle tracks.
So yes, so the point then that we move through to, which is the element in red, what we've put forward, what I've put forward there, because that overall plan, that overall parameters plan, doesn't delineate within the area, the precise area of attenuation basins. It stretches across the whole of that border, that boundary. Then I'm asking for an additional element of wording that says no development shall commence until a plan of the extent of the attenuation basins in accordance with. Now, if you want to pull the plan up, we can, which is the reference N2000-005C. That's the illustrative master plan, and that does delineate the area of the basins. And the reason I wanted to do that is the last part of the new sentence. So the approved attenuation basins within the greenbelt shall not accommodate head walls, building structures, but specifically footpaths and cycle tracks. So the first part of the condition allows footpaths and cycle tracks because they are either identified on the council's plan, local plan, or they exist. But clearly you've heard my evidence that says we will not be bringing those into the attenuation basins. So it's an extra element to say what we won't be doing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
There's a lot to unpack there.
It's to accord with the
So
evidence
if
you've
you
heard.
make it, I think whether that it's going to be public or not, you're saying not public. We've talked about whether to make it public, but that whatever the outcome of that is will depend on whether there's going to be footpaths and cycle tracks. Is that right?
Correct. And the if you go to the end of that schedule, if we're dealing with that as well, the only other condition in dispute that's not highways is shown on the other schedule as number 37. And that's me bringing forward an additional condition that basically says boundary treatment for that area will be submitted and improved. So the two link together on the point that you've just said. If you believe that the public can be encouraged or allowed into those areas, you'll probably strike out that condition, and you'll also strike out the additionality. If you don't, then I would suggest it should be brought in.
Okay. And whilst we're on 37, then can we tie it down? I think you made a specific point that these boundary treatments aren't going to be fences; they're going to be hedges. Can we tie that down?
We can, ma'am. Yes. I think conversation with the council, we talked originally about a more specific type of enclosure, and I think we took the view we would defer that. But if that's part of your judgment that it should be hedgerow, then
Might be an important thing to be precise about. Yeah.
Yes.
So something like schemes for boundary treatment to consist of
boundary hedgerows or boundary
Okay.
treatment comprising hedgerows.
boundary hedgerow. Okay. The boundary treatments comprising the hedgerows. Yeah. Okay. Okay, fine. So that's 37 dealt with.
Can I just?
Yeah.
Put the council's position on
Yeah,
that?
do feel free to interject.
We don't actually feel that this is a necessary condition. Things like landscaping and boundary treatments are
Reserve matter.
very pragmatic. But the council's position is we can't really see that it's fulfilled the planning purpose. There's no planning reading to the public out of that area. And the additional point is that it, by doing so, might give rise to urban design issues. So we feel it's better just not to have the condition and to deal with all that at reserve matters stage.
Yeah. So the council are actually in favour of the public being allowed in.
Yeah.
Well, the council trying to have it both ways, because council's evidence is they don't change of use and public open space and get excited about the impact on the green belt from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when it comes to a thing, that's fine, it won't be.
I know they
Well,
we don't need to go over
We're
the
talking
pain
about
purpose. Yeah.
from a
Yeah, no, I understand the point.
position of no prejudice. I mean, this imposing condition presupposes you come to the view that it's acceptable in principle, and then we're looking at the conditions.
And ma'am, if you do grapple with this point for the reasons that's been said, condition 13 requires the details of the design of the attenuation ponds. It doesn't control the use. So if you do believe that the use is a live element, I won't go back over the evidence, then I don't believe there is a condition that controls that, which was the point that was raised before about is it duplication. I don't believe that that is duplication, and then it's a judgment for you to take as to whether it should be controlled or not, and if so, of what nature.
Yeah, I think you're all taking me down rabbit holes. Let's just deal with the first point about whether these boundary hedges would be a reserve matter. I think if it came down to, I mean, I'll take it away to consider your point. But I think the planning purpose would be the green belt.
Yeah.
wouldn't it? And it would be necessary, I would have thought, to deal with that at this stage, but I can take the point away. Can we get to that other condition in a minute? Right. I don't even know where we began.
Right, we're back to
parameters, limitations.
we finished 4, we're on 5.
Okay, so that was 4 that was struck out. And we gave you the alternative wording, that's where we started, wasn't it? You don't actually take anything down from yeah, okay. I mean, we're relying on the parameters plan to tell us where green belt land is, but that is set out in the local plan, isn't it?
It is, ma'am, yes.
So you could actually just have a condition that said general conformity with the parameters plan. And then something separate that dealt with the fact that in the green belt, there would be no rebuilding of above ground level structures associated with the generation basin, something like that. So I could split those. Would you have any objection to that? The same, it's just lumping them together sometimes can make them less clear. And then the additional point the client's asking for is a plan of the extent of the attenuation basin area.
It's simply, ma'am, when you look at the parameters plan, it doesn't go to the granular nature of along that southern boundary where the edge of the attenuation basins will be.
Yeah.
We call this the footpaths either side, and therefore this condition rightly says footpaths are acceptable in the greenbelt because they exist, but we're not proposing any new footpaths. So it was again that point that within a certain subset of the greenbelt area.
I think the parameters plan says more than just, I mean, it tells us a lot, doesn't it? It tells us where housing is going, where roads are going. So I think that should be a discrete point.
Yes.
That we want. But to be fair, more the reserve matters, to be honest.
Yes, yes, agreed, ma'am. I don't think there's a difference between us and the council on
so
that.
The reserve matters need to be in general conformity with the parameter plan. Tick. Shelve that one. We also want to make sure that the green belt land doesn't have any of the attenuation basin buildings and so on, because we've discussed that. So that's a separate matter. I think that's more discreet than just about the reserve matters being in general conformity with the plan. And then now we're talking about, we want to know the extent of our attenuation basin and the details of that. So I think that's a separate point again, or a separate condition again, that we're asking for that to come forward again, I guess, as part of our reserve matters.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. In the attenuation area, what we can't have, and the details for approval of what you can have.
Or just what you're proposing, and that's either a yay or a nay. Yeah. Okay. So really you're saying, yeah, well, what we're looking for is that reserve matters, we want to know exactly what this attenuation basin area is going to be like. Yeah.
I think, ma'am, because it's the focus of this inquiry for the same reasons the council talked about plans. We want a framework. If you're minded to approve this, we want to be clear on the framework when we bring forward our reserve matters, rather than leaving it absolutely open, having gone through all of this exercise.
Yeah, I think that then your last sentence is kind of repetition of that other point, isn't it? Just about the green, going back to the green belt and not having structures in it.
It is, Ma'am. I think the way you've described it in three elements makes sense. I think the middle element, there will be no, but the first one deals with general conformity with the parameters. The middle element on Greenbelt says there'll be no structures, etc. I think what the council wanted to bring in was the middle element had footpaths and cycleways, but that's just a
I can deal with that
fact,
separately.
they exist. And hence the third element would say, yes, no structures, no footpaths.
I guess I just need to get my head around whether the attenuation based on reserve matter, I suspect it probably is. But I can either say at reserve matters should include details of the attenuation basin area, or as part of this outline commission, we wanted to make details of the attempt. So either way, yeah, exactly. It's just making sure we get that right, how we ask for that information, but it's agreed that we need that information. Yeah. Okay. Okay, sorry, there's a lot to unpack, I think, on condition 4, at least get my head around there. So I think it had multiple purposes.
Yes.
Okay, so condition 5 then.
Under condition recommended from Yorkshire Water about the sewer crossing the site in the northwest corner of the site.
Okay. And condition 6.
Similarly, Coal Authority with the zones of influence with no build zones.
Okay.
Condition 7,
Yep.
phasing.
Okay, fine.
1
Yeah.
to 4. 8 goes to the land stability evidence, and again is recommended by the Coal Authority as part of their consultee response.
Okay. So that's from the Coal Authority then. Yeah. Contamination, so that's what we were talking about yesterday. Is that
Yes,
right?
ma'am. Standard suite of conditions on assessments and what to do if you find anything.
Archaeology we've heard about. That makes sense.
So the surface water drainage, which is 13, is the point you can see in C, details of the design of the attenuation ponds,
Right.
which is where the potential overlap might be, but the wording is around the design. So clearly,
Yeah, so they both serve the same purpose potentially.
As I say, my concern was that relates to design, not use. So that comes back to your point around whether you have any truck with that point or not. So clearly, the surface water drainage is more than just the attenuation basin. So this goes through that scheme of all of those elements, the connection to Park Brook. But linking back to condition 4, whether C is strong enough in its own right.
Right. So the surface water drainage is about the whole site, drainage of the whole site, and the attenuation basins are part of that, which is what condition 13 is doing. But it's whether we want to be even more secure on our attenuation basins because of the issues we've been discussing in this inquiry.
For the greenbelt reasons rather than the actual surface water attenuation reasons.
Yeah. You have a view on that on the council.
Well, I mean, we just thought condition 13 does the job,
Okay.
and therefore we don't need to elaborate on condition 4.
Okay. So you're actually happy just with them. Oh, you're happy with condition 4, did you say?
No, rather
you're
than
happy with
putting
condition 13?
extra
Yeah.
detail in
Okay.
condition 4.
Do you actually
On
not
condition 13.
don't want the
does job.
extra detail on attenuation basins? Okay. Okay. 14.
14 is the sort of tailpipe of 13, really. It's just making sure that everything has been done.
Okay. 15 landscape and ecology management plan.
Yes, ma'am, that's recommended by Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, and it's a fairly standard list of the elements required.
Mm. Has some of this work already been done? When looking at ecology?
Yeah, a little,
Mm,
but not all of it.
okay. And does anyone, I mean, sometimes with conditions of this nature, you can take the detail out because they're kind of looked at on a case by case basis and just ask for the management plan specific to this site. Did you have any views on that?
I've certainly seen both ways done, ma'am. I think this one came from the consultee, and we didn't have a problem with it, rather than it being a precise requirement of the appellant.
Derbyshire Wildlife Trust.
Provided you don't find that details of study designing that it will benefit wildlife, don't get into conflicts with what you've submitted from a drainage or green belt point of view. If you're going out with the concept fees for approval, I've got to look at the bin.
Okay.
That's cool.
Okay, and then condition 16.
Part of the ecological mitigation, ma'am, built into the development.
In the housing phase development, landscape and biodiversity but enhancement. Shall be connected to an agreed lighting. Doesn't that come under the 11? Location of flat boxes, bird boxes, hedgehog, holes.
Yes.
It's it's the likelihood is that the development will be delivered in phases, and so there will be some communal landscape areas, and then phases may well go to different developers for the actual delivery of the housing. So it's just to close off that.
So that can, it says no development shall commence until you've got your landscape and ecological management plan. So could you deal with that under there? How does, within the housing phases of the development, what does that tell me in that condition? What does that mean?
Well, the landscape and ecology management plan is to deal with the shared structural areas of the site. And it may have a framework for what is to happen in the individual phases, but we're envisaging that the actual housing will come in from maybe a number of different developers, different to do each different phase, and that they in turn will have an obligation to do some sort of biodiversity enhancement as to try and capture that in a separate condition.
Part 115 or 21 of the agreement is going to implementation. It's talking about things.
Within the housing phases of the development, landscaping and biodiversity enhancement shall be provided before occupation of all of the dwelling. Now, I don't see why that can't be covered under the landscape ecology management plan, which covers timing and precisely the enhancement. But I can go away and think about it, whichever you think further you want to think about.
No, not really. I mean, that was the rationale for the separate condition, because it's envisaged different house builders will be submitting reserve matters applications that they might not have any influence over the shared areas that might be under the control of a different management company. So it was just to make sure that the housing developers are going to also do biodiversity enhancement.
So how does condition 16 do that?
So it specifically says within the housing phases.
What is that? I don't know. I'm sure
Well,
that. If I was the developer and I was looking at that, I mean, within the housing phases, assuming there is phases, so I'm part of that housing phase. What do I have to do? Submit details. Back boxes, third boxes.
All of which you're going to do individually.
I can't actually commence development under condition 15 until but are you saying if one developer starts a phase?
Mum, is it worth, you're meeting condition 16 as you say, but in condition 15 having no development of each phase or in accordance with condition 7, which is the phasing condition. So if we link this back so that you're right, we don't have to do site-wide, I think, which is the sentiment, that we actually link this back to be delivered on a phase, the whole of 15 on a phase basis linked to discharge of condition 7, then it addresses the point.
No development can commence in any phase.
When you have a phasing condition, which we've just discussed.
Does that work?
That would work. I mean, it all depends on what comes out of the phasing plan. But I had in mind that it's quite often the case in these bigger housing schemes that the actual structural landscaping and the shared areas would be a phase in its own right, and then we get the other phases that actually deliver housing. That was my only thought process there, and I know house builders do like to, they like, from the point of view of managing the delivery of these conditions, they like to see that there's a specific condition that relates to what they've got to do, as opposed to what's being delivered.
I mean, maybe I'm being overly simplistic, but if you're asking for a landscape and ecological management plan and you want it to cover the whole site, presumably, and you've asked for that, I want a landscape and ecological management plan to cover all the green areas and back boxes that I want to see on this entire development. And you can't start developing until you've agreed that with me. And then I want it implemented as agreed. It doesn't matter which phase or developer, they have to meet that, surely.
But they're not all going to start at the same time. So
no, but none of them can start until the whole thing's agreed.
But the detail of the individual phases might come in over a 10-year period. And
right. So you're saying you couldn't agree?
I mean, we could get rid of 6 if we sort of tied it back to the phasing plan. That's probably the best way to do it. So we're saying no development within a particular phase.
So is that the problem with what I'm suggesting, in that it's too big a site to agree?
Yeah.
I think, Mum, from our perspective, the phasing condition, phasing 7, allows us to do what you've said. There will be certain site enabling works, certain comprehensive site delivery works that we will put in a phase, and then there'll be sub phases to bring forward the housing. But condition 7 requires us to work that out. So that's that. To me, the issue is resolved with condition 7. And then, as you rightly say, there will be condition 15. If we add in any phase, then the council will have approved the phasing. There might be some site-wide elements, there might be some more site-specific elements, but the two link together, and that's how you bring forward these large sites.
So you essentially want a landscape and ecological management plan for each phase.
Yeah, that would work, I think.
Very normal.
So essentially what we're talking about then is instead of a landscape and ecological management plan for the whole site, we want one per phase.
Yes.
Okay. And then that would resolve condition 16. Okay. Okay, condition 17. Sorry, habitat. Environment on the vicinity of the site to the south.
This one is a interesting one in that this one, as I understand it, is to deal with off-site habitat from an environmental point of view. But if you look at condition 34, there is the Greenbelt Enhancement Scheme that deals with off-site improvements to environmental quality and accessibility. So whether what is in addition, what is 17 doing that 34 isn't doing?
The main thing that's screaming to me about condition 17 is it's a bit woolly. On land in the vicinity of the site to the south. Where's that then? Can we pinpoint that?
Yes, ma'am. So in the, I'll find you a reference, we've identified the broad extent of that on a plan under the ownership control of Harworth, and we've identified those. So when we come back with the biodiversity metric, we've identified some of those types of works. So shall I find that plan and give you a reference?
So, well, that plan, if there is a plan of this land, it needs to be referenced. Can that be dealt with by a condition if it's not in the red line?
Yes, it's under the control of the applicant.
Right. Does it need to be a Grampian condition?
It would from that point of view. Let me just find where that plan is.
Is this part of biodiversity net gain?
Yes, ma'am. There's the biodiversity net gain drawing as Appendix 4 of Mr. Baker's evidence, but there is an accessibility one which will be part of the wall flow. On it. Appendix 16, Mr. Walsh shows evidence.
This is basically to ensure you meet that biodiversity net gain, yeah?
Yeah.
Except we haven't tied down the figures you gave me.
No, ma'am, because we're at a outline stage, those elements have been assumed, and I think as you heard.
Sometimes they get tied down. So if someone makes a commitment to say 25% biodiversity net gain, sometimes you see them in legal agreements as well, I think. But here it's just really saying
I think
before any dwelling is occupied. Yeah, that might be a bit late. It's basically saying you need to submit details of your biodiversity net gain for approval.
which is the over the page, the second part, that's what it does against the decrometric.
Yeah.
Rather than make it more complex, I think the line is probably to make it more simple.
That helps, yeah. That's kind of what I'm trying to do.
I think so. It's a requirement at some stage, I take the point about occupied, but probably relatively early on to submit a proposal for on-site and off-site biodiversity net gain. And what that proposal will have to do is in accordance with the relevant metric.
Yeah.
So the metric changes
Yeah,
We're already on to the fourth version, so
okay,
the more you bake in detail, the more you actually create sort of little wrinkles for later.
yeah. So is that right, council, on the council side? But what we're looking for here is details of our biodiversity net gain.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
essentially it, yes.
Okay. And is there a time when you want that to come forward? Did you suggest before any dwelling hereby previously occupied, or would you want it earlier?
In that it's off site, it doesn't necessarily need to come in earlier.
Hmm. And is it a problem that it's off-site, it being a condition?
Not to our explanation of it. The land is owned by the developers, and the condition bites on before any dwelling is occupied. So the actual thing that triggers the point at which the condition can be enforced is when the dwelling is occupied, which is on site. So
I'm just thinking out loud, what happens if that land, I don't know, is sold and no longer within their ownership? Or do
they can't
provide?
occupy the dwelling.
Right, okay.
I think the point is at the moment there isn't actually a plan before us that defines exactly what that land is. You can't see it.
So how are we come up with the taxation?
Well, it's on the back of the state of evidence. There is that plan, and that's what he's using.
Right, so that's the land to the south.
That
and
is what we're
the field.
talking about.
Yeah.
It's got a baseline plan, that's what it is now.
Right,
And it's got this is with development and what it would be, and that's how it's come up with the calculation. So there is a scheme, and that's the basis of the calculation. But it's a scheme which is, I would say, early doors, because it's an outline application and because you've not got to that detail. So what we're actually asking, I think here, is that it's a refinement of the scheme that's already been suggested. Now, quite how you do that, I think it's along the lines of biodiversity proposals to provide additional detail to what is in Appendix 1 to the Baker statement. That's essentially what we're asking.
it could be a scheme for off-site habitat and biodiversity enhancements in accordance with, or in general accordance
with Appendix 1 of Mr. Baker's statement, which is 7 PB 7111.
Okay.
So Mr. Moore makes a good point. The whole document is Appendix 1. Rather confusingly, within that, there are then 4 appendices.
Okay.
So it's Appendix 4 within Appendix 1.
Okay.
It's a sort of Russian doll type nesting.
And just for clarity, were you also going to delete the metric 3.1 and just put the relevant metric for the reasons Mr. Sager said?
I think if you're referring to Mr. Sager's reasons of simplicity and making things easier, yeah, probably.
Thank you.
So the relevant metric, so yeah, metric, sorry. Okay, I think I have to think about that one. Employment and training then, condition 18.
Yes, ma'am, it's a standard condition from the local authority to maximise the delivery of the social benefits locally.
Levels. Condition 19. Makes sense. About our reserve matters again.
Yep.
20, tree and hedgerow protection.
Well, Mr. Moore's just reminding me that perhaps for each phase would be helpful in these tying the condition back to phasing again in the sidewide.
What, the tree and hedgerow protection?
The
level.
one.
What level is asking for in respect to reserve matters? Are you saying there might be different reserve matters for different phases?
It's the flexibility because of the phasing condition that allows that element.
The reserve matters application showing these details. That would probably cover it though, wouldn't it? If you're doing one phase and you're doing reserve matters rate, you would submit details of your relevant levels. Yeah, hedgerow protection then, okay. Not the landscaping reserve matter, is it?
Sorry, ma'am.
Tree and hedgerow protection, is that a landscaping reserve matter?
Yes. Yeah.
The reserve matters would just require the details to come in. I don't think that the reserve matters go so far as to say you've got to put in details of the hedgerow protection. So that needs to be as a separate condition.
Okay, I'll make a decision on that then.
I think it does need to be by phase though, because it works starting at one end of the site, protecting a tree that's hundreds of yards away. It's to be point.
Okay. But again, that would, if it is a reserve matter, then when you put in your reserve matter for your phase, you could, in theory, the council could put a condition to protect trees and hedgerows at reserve matters.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of get to the right point. Reserve matters is the details of what you're going to do. Tree protection is the implementation.
Okay. No development in any phase.
Yes. That was what I was.
Okay, so no development, site clearance or preparatory work in any phase shall commence until tree protection, etc. Yeah. Okay. More hours of this have we got?
Exciting though, isn't it?
Isn't it exciting? I do like conditions. Right. Condition 21 then. Construction management highways. Not in dispute.
No. And from the county council.
Okay.
Next one, 22, is also county council recommended a derivative, and I think the district council have added additional elements around the not just highways. I understand it.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get my head around 21. No development should commence until details of measures for the avoidance of surface water runoff from the site during the construction phase and a timescale for implementation have been submitted to. Details of measures for the avoidance of surface water runoff. Surface water runoff, what? Have we not dealt with surface water?
From, as I understand it, from the site onto the adopted highway.
Right.
During the construction phase.
Okay.
First, it's during construction management activities.
During so no development should commence until details of measures for the avoidance of surface water runoff from the site during the construction phase. So surface water runoff onto the highway.
Correct. It's come from the county and it's in that.
Onto what would it for public highway? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Might need to make that a bit clearer then. From the site during construction. Yeah.
Includes highways, it could be maybe in health, it could be off and land where there'll be environmental issues as well.
In construction, okay. Okay, yeah. 22, you were saying construction management plan. Fine. You need to, yeah, on any particular phase, that's got the useful bit in there, which we can probably adopt for others. Okay. Construction management biodiversity, condition 23. Right. 24, no removal of hedgerows, trees or shrubs will take place between the 1st of March and the 1st of August. Right, are we into contested highways then?
Do you want to put those to one side and carry on through and deal with those at the end?
Okay, yeah. Sound installation, condition 30, it's part of reserve matters. A scheme of sound installation. Why is this then?
Because to the same question, I don't know that there's any new school on film.
Is there a railway line going on?
We did have a representation from the environmental health officer on this issue, and it was thought that some dwellings would be affected by road noise and possibly on the industrial estate as well, which is on the opposite side of the lane.
Okay.
And the condition was just repeated verbatim from what they recommended.
Is it a reserve matter? Which reserve matter would noise be?
They're not specifically a usual reserve matter, but
No, so if it's a problem, we could even write it down now,
yeah,
outline stage.
no, I agree with that. But it is a problem.
Yeah.
I haven't actually seen any evidence that there are already houses close to the industrial estate, then the development scheme will be. The roads that we're talking about, Green Lane, Upperthorpe, we're not talking about motorways or dual carriageway trunk road or anything.
Yeah.
I
I can take a view on that. I can read the environmental health consultation, assuming that's somewhere that can be found. In the
It will be amongst the consulting section
Yeah.
and the core documents.
Okay. Right, I'll have a look at that and form of view.
Well, environmental protection is 2.13 in the core documents. There's 3 responses listed there.
Sorry, say that again.
2.13 in the core documents, and there's 3 responses, sub-elements to 2.13.
Okay, so that's where I'll find it. Excellent, thank you. Okay, lighting then, condition 31. Right, any work noticing a detailed lighting strategy. Yeah, this is, funnily enough, one that people sometimes argue is a reserve matter because it comes from the layout, but it can always be prior to submission of reserve matters, so just before. But that's probably just an academic point. The lighting strategy is predominantly because of ecology.
Ecology and is achieving good design.
Good design, I think. Okay. Vision 32, open space play facilities in communal areas. More details for footpaths, like the routes, loops, that's communal green space. There'll be significant improvement writing. Not, you think this is stuff?
Yeah.
Well, the reserve matters don't specifically go into what's needed for recreational activities. For example, this is just to flag up that these are the essential components of the development, and the details are needed for them. It could come in as part of the reserve matters submission. But because they're essential components, it was thought it should be a separate condition as well.
I think details of footpath cycle route, green spaces, it's going to be a reserve matter under layout and landscaping. And what detail you want, you have, that's at your discretion at reserve matter stage. Presumably, if it doesn't meet your requirement at reserve matter, you can say no.
And one was part of the reserve matter condition, if you wanted, you could say in brackets, including these items.
Yes, exactly. So what you can do at outline is say, when I get reserve matters on landscaping and layout, I would like to be this for a bit more certainty.
Yeah.
So you can guide what you want to see in the reserve matters at this stage, but you can't necessarily tie it down if it's a reserve matter.
And you can't go on and talk about funding and delivery mechanisms, but you can talk about the way the maintenance and management.
Okay. Travel plan and commission of now you have a sort of a travel plan, haven't you, or at least a sort of a draft?
There's a framework.
Framework, yeah, okay. But it can't be tied down at this stage.
No, I think quite often with a scheme of this sort of scale, you have a framework of what your targets and aims and objectives are, and the detail follows once you've got more precision.
Okay. So it's going to be submitted to and approved.
Could be in general accordance with the framework.
It possibly doesn't even need to say what it needs to include. The point is that a suitable travel plan is submitted to and approved by the local planning authority. Including in time for the implementation, yeah. Yes, we need an implementation clause on that. Carried out or implemented as approved.
It's got that on the fourth and fifth line.
Is it there?
Once approved, shall be implemented in accordance with details and timetables set out therein.
Put them in the middle row and at the end.
Oh yeah, I see it. Once approved, shall be implemented. Okay, conditions for greenbelt enhancements.
And while Mr. Walshaw's appendix 16 is the plan, you can see it there. It's the other side of the ecology that we've just said. So it's the footpaths and what we might do within there. So it can have a in general conformity with that.
Very right.
It's not got the detail.
Is that necessary?
In the local plan policy indicates that there should be greenbelt, offsite greenbelt enhancement as part of the greenbelt compensation issues in the allocation of the site in its first instance, and that's what we've floated.
Right.
So in the reason under this, the council have made reference to that policy LC1 and the paragraph 5.27.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Landscaping. Planting, seeding, turfing. Is this a reserved matter?
The reserve matters deal with the detail of it. This condition is to require its ongoing maintenance and you know, if plants die or become diseased or lost for whatever reason, then we replace.
Okay. But when you get those details in, you can then put a condition on your reserve matter about planting, seeding, turfing. Could you do it that way?
Well, the outline permission is the permission.
Yeah.
All we're getting in is details of reserve matters or the conditions or whatever. So usually we would be looking to impose this at outline stage. Okay, but if you were satisfied it could be imposed at reserve matter stage, then we'd rest on that.
Okay. First one is actual housing, Vision 36. Building, right. And there's a local plan policy there as well. Right.
Highways. Will we move on to highways, ma'am?
Yeah, I was just looking at condition 37.
Oh, well, 37 was an earlier iteration from me around that means of enclosure that we have superseded. So that's gone all together. And
I get it.
Yeah, for the reasons you said it may.
In the context of condition, yeah, it's the one that we're talking about.
And
now.
same with 38.
Green belt.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just make it about it.
No, in terms of the next section on highways, I think the easiest way to do this, because we produced this table, but it's helpful, but not perhaps totally helpful. If you have the transport statement of common ground open, which is CD 3.3.3.
Just bear with me a second. So started at 9:30. What time is that now? Getting on for 1. I'm just a bit restless. I probably need a break, to be honest. Maybe others do as well. I know you probably don't want to take lunch because you probably want to finish before lunch. Kind of would you? How long do you think this would take? Just putting your points forward. I mean, I know I'm the one taking the time.
I think only about 20 minutes, ma'am. I don't think there's much between us. I think as you've just gone through with everything else, you'll take a judgment on whether these are implementable. There's nothing of substance. It's precise wording.
It's 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29.
Yeah.
Everything else we've talked about.
Yes. Yes.
And is it different points on each? Or is there sort of an overriding thing?
The overriding theme was the case management conference. You asked us to make sure we compressed as many conditions into fewer.
Yeah.
We went therefore to the county council and said, look, there's duplication here. Can we come up with a more refined list, which is the appendix in the statement of common ground?
Right.
That's an agreed list between us and the county council. And I think what I would encourage now is for starting point. Yeah, that's where we start, and I think
not here.
The right hand side are exactly the same.
Okay.
But it's just the way we've set it up. I'm not sure it's as helpful. So I think if we start with the list in the statement of common ground, and then I think it's for Ms. Ray to tell us why they don't work.
Okay. Where am I?
Being too blunt, I think that's the route forward that I would suggest.
Okay. But they're taken from the highway or
The highway statement of common ground.
highway.
Core document 333. And there's an appendix with agreed conditions with the highway authority, appendix B. And that's got what we and they agreed, and we'll explore the extent and the reasons for any disagreement from the local authority.
Where am I in the statement of common ground?
It's the highways one rather than the main one.
Okay.
PV
3.3.
And if you'd assist, ma'am, the table that you've got in front of you is a faithful reproduction of those words from that appendix, the right-hand side of the table.
I'm slowly catching up. So I'm in 3.3.3. And what did you just say to me?
Appendix B
Of that.
of that document could be a page and a half, starting with a bullet point before any other operations are commenced.
Yeah. Is that a condition?
Yes, so those are bullets designated condition. Each of those are the conditions, and suggest we just start at the top and work through if you are happy to carry on.
Okay. So in the state, so in the transport statement of common ground, does that agree with the council?
With the county council.
Oh, with the
The
council.
highway authority, yes.
Oh, okay.
So all these are agreed with the county council who have jurisdiction
On highway.
on highways. I think the district council issues are, well, yeah.
Okay. Have you had a chance to look at these in the transport statement of common ground?
Yes, and as a result of looking at those, I did redraft the conditions as they've been crossed out on the document that you've just been looking at. So there's no issue as regards the sentiment of what these conditions are seeking to deliver. That is agreed. Our issues are around enforceability and precision of some of these conditions. So that would be reason for redrafting them.
Okay. Where's
Well, in the table left-hand side,
yeah.
but if you can read through the crossed out lines on the main list of conditions, they would have drafted and put to the appellant and were crossed out because the appellant wanted to go back to the conditions that had been agreed with the highway authority.
Well, I always suggest another way of looking at this. If there are concerns about precision or enforceability on the matters agreed with the county, let's understand what they are one by one and see if it's going to be agreed with the council.
So if I want your wording, it's here.
Yes.
Right. What's the big difference then between numbers all over the place?
Could I offer some information when you go to the table showing both versions of the contested conditions? There is a mapping. There's been a shift, so they don't line up.
I would disregard that table for the reasons Mr. Blair's saying.
Okay.
I think the two elements you're looking at is the transport statement of common ground for ours and the county council, and the struck out for the district council. Those are the two things.
Right. So on 25 struck out on the first bullet point of the transport statement, what's the difference without me sitting here boring everyone by reading them?
I'm just struggling to pull up the transport statements, so I'm just working from the table. Sorry, but I'm seeing the wording the same. So the condition starting before any other operations are commenced.
Yeah.
First one. So it's just
Yeah, so it looks like
this matters. I mean, the way we'd normally start off a condition like that would be before any works or the vehicle access points up into the site or commence detailed plans for the geometry, etc.
yeah. So it seems to me the council's one is more general, and the appellant's is more specific.
Well, the appellant's referring to plans, but that's already covered in the first the plans condition of the schedule of conditions.
Is this the discussion we had earlier?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shall be submitted to and be approved in writing by the local planning authority. That should be worded as shall have been submitted to and shall have been approved in writing by the local planning authority. The way it's written puts an obligation on the planning authority to approve it. What I was suggesting was pulling out the green lane widening as a separate condition. That just appears there in the second bullet point, but I think that would add some clarity.
I mean, the reason we put it together was your direction to have less.
And also the separate condition for green lane.
Can I see just
Less clear.
the highway authority wording? Maybe I should start with that.
Yeah, I think that's what we would suggest, Mark, which is your same common ground.
That is specific.
That's
That's just what the highway authority said. Okay, so the argument isn't with you and you, it's really with the highway authority and council.
It is. We have simply aligned ourselves with the county council as the highway authority, and that's the evidence before you at the inquiry. And we say
So
we
you
should
haven't
rely on.
pressed the highway authority conditions?
No.
Okay.
So we would normally have to redraft conditions that are recommended to you by the highway.
Yeah.
To bring them.
I mean, that's a
to
given.
address the-
I get that there's no implementation clause on, for example, the first bullet point of the first bullet point condition, if you follow me. It just says submitted to and approved in writing by local planning authority, but it doesn't actually say implemented. So I get it needs tidying up in that respect, but is there a bigger fundamental problem?
I mean, the delivery of this infrastructure is covered in.
So how does your condition do that?
So what I say is the vehicle access points shall thereafter be provided in accordance with the timescales approved in the condition 7.
I can't believe I'm trying to read something that's crossed out. We can work like that. Specific design details of 2 bit accesses here and 1 there in the locations on these plans should be submitted in a building writing. So what was your point, Mr. Ray?
Well, first, it starts off before any other operations are commenced, excluding any necessary demolition site clearance. That doesn't quite make sense to me. I think it should read, I mean, I prefer the way I've drafted it, but if we are going to rest or try and rely on word this, then that first sentence needs to say before any operations are commenced other than any necessary demolition and site clearance.
Is there a problem with prior to commencement of development? Yeah. Did you say no? Yeah. No. Yeah, we just go with that.
Well, it depends on what's approved under the phasing plan. That was all I was trying to do, just tie it
Commencement of any phase.
To tie it back to the phasing
relevant
plan.
phase.
Well, it turns important because, of course, if an access of Upperthorpe, it's only really relevant to 1 phase.
So prior to the commencement of any relevant phase, so relevant as in tied to an access.
Gaining access from that point.
Would that work? Okay.
Prior to the commencement of any phase.
Prior to the commencement of development of any relevant phase.
We need details to be submitted.
Specific design details of the bit, your accesses. That sounds sensible to me, but is there an issue with that wording?
Well, that, not specifically, but I mean, these details would come in with reserved matters anyway.
What the access details?
Well, so if we're not dealing with the reserved matters, then we do need this condition. Well, we need this condition anyway because we need this level of detail. So yes, what you're suggesting would work. That shall be submitted to and be approved in writing because changing to shall have been submitted to and have been approved in writing by the local planning authority.
Implemented as approved.
Well, not necessarily implemented because we don't know what's going to be approved under the phasing plan. With regards to the delivery of these.
Am I alone struggling here? Because I do sit here alone with no one being able to nod or
Sorry, this has been really simple to know. You've got 3 accesses.
You need to know
the details
constructed.
before you construct the access relevant to the phase that access serves, and it then needs to be implemented in accordance with the detail. And there is no need to make that more complex.
Yeah, okay.
Which is really what I was trying to do in my redrafted condition.
Right.
Is to make that more simple and precise.
Okay.
And to require the visibility slides.
I think all that's missing is implementation from the current drafting and starting with the words you put forward, Marm, earlier, which was prior to the commencement of development of any phase. And then something around the terms of the access the access to that phase shall be,
Yeah,
and then the implementation has been adding in, and what the county have is fine, I think.
how about this? I look at what the county councillor said, I look at what you said, and I come up with something.
Yeah, please.
Thing is, it's not,
There's no
it
massive
sounds like the
consultation.
actual meat of it isn't in dispute, it's the, word, I completely at a loss for words. It's the execution.
The
that's
language
the
and
problem.
execution,
Yeah.
but possibly with the exception of the condition that relates to Bridge Street. So Bridge Street is down at the bottom of the hill, away from the site in Killamarsh. And the wording of the addition in the statement of common ground is 2 steps. Before 200 dwelling, in effect, you've got to do an assessment of whether there needs to be an improvement. And then, secondly, if it is the case that there needs to be an improvement, if following the conclusion of that assessment, it is necessary to cost effectively mitigate a significant impact caused by the development to an acceptable degree, a cost-effective mitigation scheme. Now, those words, or the essence of those words, is lifted directly from the framework, paragraph 110. And there was a move away from that, which we think waters it down.
I'm really sorry, but I'm struggling to concentrate. Just
Yeah, let's have a break.
absolute-
We've been at it too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the thing, I can't hear what you're saying. I just
No.
can't take it in.
No, let's have a break. We've been at it very long
It's
time.
very hard looking at words that are crossed out.
I see that as well.
Okay, but I'm happy to take it away, to be honest, because I've got the site visits in, I've got a long journey home.
I reckon to say somebody has just helped me by printing out the council's highways conditions without the crossing out.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same text, it's just taking the crossing out off. Does that help?
Yeah,
A
that would
little.
be great. I'm just wondering why there's a travel plan in Bristol.
And that's simply because it came from the county council. It is exactly the same as the one you've just commented on, so there is.
Okay. Okay, good. So that's Mrs. Ray.
That's hers.
Mhm.
The county council's, as you know, is in the statement of common ground.
Yeah.
Those are the differences. There may be some points of implementation that need to be worked into the counties. But I'm
Yeah.
very clear that the one relating to Bridge Street works.
Which is 27.
27 in the version that's appended to the statement of common ground. I'm very clear that that works. Matches the language of the framework
Okay.
and gives the county what they want, which includes the improvement being the adopted highway and include pedestrian crossing.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to take them away.
Yeah.
And have a look at it. Is that okay with you? Stephen? Right.
Yeah, goodness, an easy day has turned into a difficult one.
They always are uncannily difficult the last day. As long as it doesn't rain, it'll be all right.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else we need to talk about then? No?
No, thank you. No, I don't think so. We've got something set up for tomorrow at 2 o'clock, obviously for
Yeah,
closing.
so we're not at, so if something comes up, we can raise it tomorrow, so we're not closing.
Correct.
We've
We've got a timetable for 106. We've got a timetable for the still compliance.
Yeah.
To be reviewed. It's possible that if we needed to have a quick chat on conditions tomorrow.
Yeah,
that
we've got
if
time
you've
to
got
do that.
something
Yeah.
tomorrow morning, when you
I nearly
sort of
said that, you know, I nearly
had
said I
chance to
might
have a
look at these
think about
conditions
it.
tonight, but you know, if I'm getting home at 7, 8 o'clock,
yeah,
I
but
can't
tomorrow
figure that
morning
out.
you might have a couple
But
of
tomorrow
hours.
morning, I can't even, you know, honestly, half terms. I just have a tiny rant about half terms and children. It's Easter holiday next week, so I booked next week off like a diligent mother. But on the Friday, the school are shutting at 1:15, and there's an Easter service in the morning.
Oh.
So I really should have taken another day off.
Yeah.
Schools like to creep out those. So I envisaged Friday's going to be busy, and it's my son's birthday today, which I've noticed his 11th birthday. So I'm very eager to get home and say happy birthday to him, rather than read conditions. Happy birthday, son.
Yeah, I completely understand that.
Anyway,
But-
that's a lot of context you didn't need to know,
No,
but
but I
that's
think
why I might not.
I think we've made good progress to a point, and I think you do need a sort of a sort of slightly step away from it for a little bit, have a look at it tomorrow morning,
Well,
and
I
we've
think-
got some chance
yeah.
to have a discussion if any points occur to you that
Yeah,
you want to discuss then.
I think with conditions, if things, you know, I need to go away and have a look at what you've all said. There's a lot there. I need to work out what conditions, if it comes to it, I would be applying. And if that happens and there's still questions, I can always write out to you both on them.
You can, yes, not uncommon and to be welcomed actually, rather than have a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And I'm going to thought, and I'm going to not have worked with Corbett. It's like with it being a running company. That's one of the day.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
I
still-
thought you were going to say you could read your conditions. while I was looking at that.
Well, that is when
No.
when you do the site visit, it's up to you now.
Normally, yeah, but I'm quite a long way away from here, so I'd rather not come back to the site visit if possible. I mean, I always can come back to a site visit, but to be honest, I need a site visit, not looking at more documents today. Okay, right, let's adjourn then for today, and I will see you all online tomorrow at 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.